Once upon a time, in a small village nestled beneath towering mountains, there lived two best friends, Milo and Arlo. Milo, an energetic boy with red shirt and messy brown hair and bright green eyes, was always chasing excitement. Arlo, sharp hazel eyes and a calm demeanor, with green shirt, often found himself being pulled into Milo's wild ideas. One evening, sitting by the village campfire, the boys overheard an old traveler spinning tales about a bear that roamed the nearby forest. It moved so fast that its heart was said to beat at an impossibly high speed, like the engine of a machine. Milo leaned forward, eyes wide with excitement. "Did you hear that, Arlo?" Arlo frowned, scratching the back of his head. He wasn't one to believe in tall tales, but he could never resist an adventure, especially when Milo was involved. "It's probably just a story. But we could check it out, just to be sure." At dawn, the two set off into the forest. Milo led the way, as usual, practically bouncing with excitement, his green eyes scanning the dense trees for any signs of the mythical bear. His steps were quick, almost too fast, as if his energy was a match for the creature they were seeking. Arlo followed closely behind, his broader frame moving carefully through the underbrush. His sharp hazel eyes darted from side to side, wary of the unfamiliar territory. Though quieter than Milo, he was always thinking, planning the next move in case things went wrong. Milo turned to Arlo, a grin plastered on his face. "I bet we'll see it before sunset." Arlo sighed, pulling his pack higher on his shoulders. "Let's just make sure we get back before dark." Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed from the bushes ahead. Milo froze, his heart leaping in anticipation, while Arlo's hand instinctively moved toward the knife on his. "Did you hear that?" whispered Milo, his eyes shining with a mix of excitement and fear. Arlo nodded, his body tensing, always the cautious one. "Stay close." The rustling grew louder, and before they knew it, a massive bear stepped out from the trees. Its fur glistened under the sunlight. It moved with such incredible speed that it appeared as a blur, its paws barely touching the ground. The air hummed around it, like the sound of a distant engine revving up. Milo stood in awe, his wide-eyed amazement. "It's real," he whispered, his breath catching in his throat. Arlo, ever the pragmatist, took a slow step back, his muscles tensing. "We should go. Now." His voice was low, calm, but his hazel eyes were locked on the bear, calculating their escape route. The bear let out a low growl, its body vibrating with intensity. Milo, still mesmerized, didn't move, while Arlo reached for his arm. "Milo, we're leaving," he urged, pulling him back. Without warning, the bear charged. Its speed was unbelievable, moving faster than any creature they had ever seen. Milo stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest, while Arlo grabbed his hand and pulled him into a sprint. "Run!" shouted Arlo, his voice breaking the stillness of the forest. They raced through the trees, but the bear was relentless. Its movements were so fast, it seemed to flicker in and out of existence, like a shadow. Milo, panting and struggling to keep up, felt the ground blur beneath him. "We can't outrun it," Milo gasped, his face pale with fear, the excitement from earlier now replaced by sheer panic. Arlo looked around and spotted a rocky path up ahead. "Follow me," he called, veering off the trail. He hoped the jagged rocks would slow the bear down. Milo followed without. As they reached the rocky clearing, the bear's pace finally slowed. It stopped at the edge of the clearing, panting heavily, its eyes locked on the two boys. For a moment, it seemed like the world had paused. Everything was still except the high-pitched hum of the bear's heart, thundering in the silence. Milo, his chest heaving from the run, stared at the bear in amazement. Even now, he couldn't help but marvel at the creature. It's incredible," he breathed, his wide green eyes fixed on the animal. Arlo, standing firm beside him, was less impressed. His focus was entirely on how to get them out safely. "Don't move," he whispered, his hazel eyes calculating their next move. He could feel the tension in the air, and he wasn't sure if the bear would attack or leave them be. The bear stood there, its eyes glowing with an intelligent gleam, as if it understood more than a normal animal should. Slowly, its growling softened, and it took one last look at Milo and Arlo before turning and sprinting back into the forest, disappearing into the trees with a blur of motion. Milo collapsed onto a nearby rock, laughing in disbelief. "Did you see that? We actually saw it! The high RPM bear!" Arlo, still catching his breath, shook his head with a faint smile. "We almost got caught by it too," he muttered, But even he couldn't hide the sense of awe he felt after witnessing something so extraordinary. Milo and Arlo made their way back to the village as the sun set, their hearts still racing from the encounter. Though they would never forget the sight of the incredible bear, it wasn't the creature itself that stuck with them the most. It was the realization that no matter how wild or dangerous the adventure, they would always face it together.